Hey everyone, Shane here, and today I'm bringing your 9th Java tutorial. In this tutorial today we're going to talk about loops. More specifically we'll be talking about for loops. We'll also be discussing equality and relational operators. So loops in any programming language are very integral and are very powerful. It allows you to run pieces of code a specified number of times, or more specifically until some condition is met. So if you needed to run something 5 times or until something happens, that's how you can do that with loops. So to understand and kind of get into loops a little bit, we first have to look at the equality and relational operators because we use those in loops. So as you can see here, I've got some of these written out here. A lot of them are going to be pretty familiar to most of you. You've seen them here, there, math, whatever. The first one is the double equal sign, which means equal to. In Java and a lot of programming languages, when you use one equal sign, you use that really when you're assigning a value to a variable. So if you remember some of our tutorials, we had like the variable my age equals 26. So that's when you use a single equal sign, is when you're assigning a value to a variable. When you're trying to compare two things or decide if two numbers are the same, that's when you're going to use that double equal sign. So double equal sign means equal to. If you want to find out if something is not equal to something else, that's when you use the exclamation point equal sign here. We have the greater than, which I'm sure everyone knows. We've also got greater than or equal to, so that evaluates if something is greater than something else or if it's equal to it as well. We've got less than, and equal to. So those are pretty basic, pretty simple, and you'll see those as we use them here. The other thing we want to look at real quick before we get started is kind of the structure of the for loop. So what we've got here, this is kind of some pseudocode, I guess you could call it, for a for loop. You have the word for to start it off. You have open and closing parentheses here. And inside that you kind of have 3 sections. You've got the counter variable, and what that does is it keeps track of essentially how many times our loop has run. We've got a condition, which is that's what we're looking for. That's where we tell it, based on this information, this is kind of how many times, or this is when to start or stop going through this loop. You've got your incrementer, which helps keep track as well how many times the loop has gone. Tells this variable to increase all the time so it can keep track. And then down here you've just got whatever you want to happen every time the loop runs. So let's take a closer look at this. So I've got a class file started here along with my main method, so we'll just jump right in and let's just create a loop. So we'll do the keyword for, open closing parentheses, and what we're going to do with this loop, we're just going to have it count to 5 or 6 for us. So the first thing we have to do is we have to create our counter variable. So that's a number, so we have to give it a type, so it's an int. And we're just going to choose a random letter. Now in most of the examples and I've seen, a lot of people like to use I or X to keep track. It's just a variable to keep track of their counter. So we're just going to use I. So I equals 0, so we initialize that counter variable, put a semicolon. Next is our statement. So this is where we evaluate when do we want the loop to stop running. We want it to run until what? And so we're going to say we want it to run until I is less than, or I'm sorry, I kind of said that backwards. We want it to run while. So this conditional statement is we want this loop to run while this is true. So we want it to run while I is less than 5. We'll put another semicolon there. And then what we got to do now is we have to do our incrementer. So we're just going to do I plus plus. And what that right there says, it says every time this loop runs, increase the variable I by 1. Okay? So then in our, just open and closing curly braces here, down below here, this is where what we want to happen every time our loop runs. So all we're going to do is we're just going to tell it to output on the screen whatever the value of our counter variable is. So just put I in there. So this is what we've got here. We've got a for loop. We've got a counter that starts at 0. We've got a condition that says run until the counter is run while the counter is less than 5. And every time you run, increase that counter by 1 so that you don't just keep running forever. And every time you run through, print out whatever the value of the counter is. So let's go ahead and run that real quick and let's see what we get. Alright, let's move this a little bit so we can see it better. Alright, so what's printed out here is printed 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let me explain kind of what's happening here. So the first time that this runs, these two items right here get looked at by Java. This one right here doesn't really get looked at until after the loop has ran at least one time. So what happens here is Java comes to our main method. We know that's where our program starts. It comes to this for loop here, and we said that while I, which is this right here, is less than 5, run this. So it goes through, it says, is I less than 5? Yeah, I is 0. So we're going to run this once. We're going to print out whatever I is. So I is 0. Alright, we come back to the top. We increment by 1. So now I is 1. Is I less than 5? Yes. So we're going to do this again. And now I is 1. Boom, there you go. And so it just keeps going over and over again until this statement right here is no longer true. So once it gets down to 4, and it comes back up here, it's going to say, okay, I is equal to 4 now. Or I'm sorry, what I meant to say was 5. So let's look at it with 4 anyways. So if it gets to 4, it comes here, it says, is I less than 4? Yes, it is. So we run it. It prints out 4. It increments by 1, so I is now 5. So we get back to this point and it says, okay, is I less than 5? No, I is not less than 5. I is equal to 5. So therefore, it knows, don't run this anymore, and exit out of the loop. So that's why when we have here that we're telling it to do this while I is less than 5, we actually don't print out 5 on the screen, because if I equals 5, then this is no longer true, so it doesn't do this. So if we wanted 5 to print out, what we could do instead is, instead of just using less than, we could do less than or equals to. And so what that says now is once I becomes 5, it says, is I less than or equal to 5? It's not less than, but it is equal to, so it goes ahead and runs it again. So let's run this again. What we should get is 0 through 5 this time. There we go. We can see that worked. Alright, so that's the basic of the for loop. There's a lot of different things you can do with this. One thing you can do is you don't have to start at 0. If for some reason you wanted to start at 10 and go to, who knows, 50, you could also do that. And it works basically the same way. Of course, your results are going to be a little bit different. Another thing you can do is you can also increment by more than 1. So in Java and a lot of programming languages, anytime you see the plus plus next to a variable, it automatically means it increments by 1. However, we can change that, and we can just do plus equals 2. And so what that says is basically I is now equal to I plus 2. So it takes the previous value of I and adds 2 to it. So if I was 4 before, and this part runs, I would now be 6. And so let's run that real quick and let's see that we can see it down here, that it actually skips a number and increments by 2 instead of 1. There you go. You can see now 44, 46, 48, 50. So every time this runs, it starts at 10, and as long as it stays below or equal to 50, it's going to increment by 2 every single time. And you can scroll through here and see that that's the case. So that's pretty much all I want to cover in this tutorial. We'll be looking at for loops a little bit more and show you some more cool things with them. We'll also be looking at 2 other types of loops called the while loop and the do while loop, and those are really cool too. So make sure that you stay tuned. I'll be showing you guys some more cool stuff, explaining some other things that we can use the for loop for, like looping through our arrays that we learned about in previous tutorials, and how that can help us. So if you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.